think you should definitely still play something. So the regular Mridanga player is not here, and the regular harmonium player is not here, but we're going to do our best. And the regular part that holds the speaker together is not here, and the microphone. So sometimes I tell devotees when I travel, I swear the same broken microphone travels from temple to temple to temple. Every ISKCON temple has the same. I was in Richmond last week. I had to hold the microphone because it kept completely falling down. It's okay. This will work. This is good. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. That's better. That's better. Gopi Jana Ballava Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Ballava Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Chiravanachari Yamuna Chiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballava Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Ballava Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Chiravanachari Yamuna Chiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Vaishnav Sangha ki jai, Gaur Hari Bol. Thank you. Great job. Hare Krishna. So I don't think I've met everybody here. Some of you may know me, I know some of you, but my name is Anuttama Das. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I'm a member of the Governing Body Commission, have oversight responsibility for some temples on the East Coast, And with Rompad Swami taking his leave of absence, he asked me if I would also visit here some. So I think this is my third or fourth trip here, counting last year. But first time I've had a chance to spend a little more time. So I'm actually here tonight, Friday, and then tomorrow we're organizing a special session, 11 to 4? Yes. 11 to 4 with lunch in between and some other breaks. And we're going to talk about, we're going to be going over some things from the 4-day ISKCON Communications course and a little bit from some other courses. One, about how to build relationships better with people in general, some general principles with ourselves in a community and with other people. And then we're going to do some work. Some of you may have done some of this training before, but I think you can never get enough. We're going to talk about some listening skills. Most people here are grahastas? Mostly. These are very good skills for grahastas, especially the men. Yes, so ladies, make sure your man comes tomorrow for the listening skill. You'll be very grateful. Life will be much improved. And then in the afternoon, we're going to talk about devotee relationships, how we can learn to serve each other better, the importance of devotee relationships, and also about creating a mood of appreciation in our hearts especially towards devotees. And then we're going to spend a little time at the end looking at some specific things, how to build cooperative and harmonious relationships, some practical things like that. So that's the plan for tomorrow. So if you can come, please join us. And I also just want to put in a little quick plug if I can. I already mentioned the ladies are going to get special benefit by having the men attend the listening, although it's not just for men, it's for ladies too. Most of the men will think my wife needs to go to that. She needs to learn to listen better. So it's a gender neutral listening seminar. But just for the men alone, in New Vrindavan, the first weekend in October, we're organizing the first ever that I know of mantra retreat. Mantra, men only. So it begins Friday, I think at 1 o'clock. So you can travel on Friday morning to New Vrindavan. It's all day, like Friday evening, afternoon and evening. And then all day Saturday and Sunday we quit at 3 so people can have time to get back to work and get back late Sunday night. They're bringing a bus of devotees up from as far away as Alachua. And among some of the people that are coming, Bhakti Marg Swami is going to be there. It's going to be a combination of some sangha, some work projects, some kind of fun guy stuff, and some drama, like Bhakti Marg Swami is coming from Toronto. So we take some walks around the New Vrindavan property, which, by the way, you may not have heard, was just named, I think it was by something called Business Institute. I have to double check that. New Vrindavan was just named one of the 30 most beautiful places in the country. Did you see that? Was it Business Institute magazine or something? Something, it wasn't ISKCON News, it was something other than that. Yeah. So that's a very nice thing. And then seminars and Sangha and Kirtan. Gaurvani's coming to do Kirtan. Yadunath Prabhu, who you may know from New York, who's a professional comedian, he's going to come. And we're going to talk, the subtitle of it is Being a Krishna Conscious Man in the 21st Century. What does it mean to have a male body and to be Krishna conscious? So we're going to talk about things, how do you balance material life and spiritual life? How to be, how to better understand our own abilities and capabilities. We haven't figured out the name for it because it's such a there's one panel that is so complex. Honestly, we've been struggling for weeks trying to figure out what the name of it is, but it's something, we go back and forth between different names. The first name we came up with is Why Women Think the Way They Do. And it was so complex, we thought that doesn't cover it. So then it went to like Mars, Venus, and realistic expectations. And then it went to common sense in Vaishnavi relate. We're struggling because it's so complicated. So all the men, if you think after, like myself, 36 years of marriage, I'm still trying to figure out how to understand my wife and why she thinks the way she does. And if you need any help with that, come. If nothing else, we may not learn anything, but we'll commiserate with each other about how little we know. But the hope is it's the only panel, because it's a conference for men, but that particular panel, we're inviting women to speak on that panel. Like a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, and then we don't say beyond that, but older women, 20, 30, and some older, representing different decades, to help us understand about how women think and what's important for them, and particularly what they like to see in their husband, their spouse, significant other like that. So I think it'll be a lot of fun, and it'll be very inspiring. Walks from up to what they call the old Vrindavan, the original Vrindavan farm, and wonderful kirtans. Some of the younger guys might know Bhutta Bhavana from the UK, who's a motivational speaker. He's coming. So it should be a very nice time. So please come. And depending on your age, tell your friends, or Facebook your friends, or Instagram your friends, or whatever you do. Get the word out there, okay? If you're really old like me, you can help put a couple posters up. Did you get some posters in the mail? All the temples are supposed to get posters. If you can send a message to Amrita, ask her to send you some. We had postcards and posters, so you can put one up. Okay? Okay, so from what I know, this is, and I appreciate you all being here this evening. This is a group of the different Bhakti Vriksha groups that meet on Fridays and come together. So I was asking some of the facilitators, leaders, how we should structure it. So I think we're going to read a little bit from Bhagavad Gita and share some thoughts. I put some ideas together on the plane, and then try to open up for some questions. So please try to think of some questions, and we'll go from there, okay? So I was going to read 2 verses in the Gita and share some comments, and part of the purport, two verses and part of the purport. So I was going to read 15:5 and 15:7, and just because we're starting a little late, I'll just read. I might just read the English. So 15:5. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who unbewildered know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. And then I'm going to read the next verse, but then come back to that purport again to save a little time. This one I'll read the Sanskrit. Some of you may know this. Mavaivam sho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manasastrani indriyani prakriti stani karshati. Krishna says, the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. And then the first purport, Prabhu says, the surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride. I kind of opened to this text, and it just seemed like this is really speaking to persons who are making some commitment to spiritual life, which you all are, so I thought it would be appropriate to read this. The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded, it's a strong word, by pride, because the conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the Lord of material nature. It is very difficult for him to surrender unto that Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's interesting because I was in Richmond last week. There's a lot of students. I was reading a purport and had a lot of masculine pronouns, he, him, etc. And there was some young women there, students, like for the first time. So I was trying as I read it to switch to person, one, this, that, because it was like talking in a glorificational type of way about he. But I'm just reading this one, it's the opposite. It's like, he is very puffed up, thinking himself the Lord of material nature. very difficult for him to surrender. So just to be fair, ladies, this is also talking about you, okay? Like, we got to gender neutral the positive ones, so that we get to the negative ones about us. It's you too, okay? Just don't be thinking that he's just talking about my husband or something like that. So, here comes again. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he or she is not the Lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion. For although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. He thus makes all things complicated. And he is always in trouble. The whole world moves under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of the world. When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all false associations caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to the material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what actually is not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Gyanattamyandasha Janan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshu Umaitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So I'm going to try to speak maybe just till say 5 after 8, and we'll leave at least 25 minutes or so for questions. So, in these verses, in these 2 verses, the same themes are there again and again and again and again and again throughout the Shastra, particularly in the commentaries by Prabhupada and our other Acharyas. But here Krishna, he's saying who we are. He's saying what our problems are, and he's saying how to solve them. That's pretty powerful stuff. Here's who you are, here's what your problems are, and here's how you solve them. I was just at a big, actually international event they had called a ministerial at the U.S. State Department about religious freedom. It's a whole other topic, but so much of what people were discussing was what I think they use the term these days, identity politics. Everybody has a certain identity of who I am. This is my land, that's your land. So many issues these days with immigration and forced people being forced over across one border, another border, etc. So, like where I am in Washington, D.C., there's so many efforts in the world to try to solve the different problems. But here Krishna's saying, here's who you are, here's the source of your problems, and here's how you can solve them. Like where I live in Washington, they spend billions of dollars trying to solve different problems, and of course so many different opinions, and these days especially, people don't necessarily appreciate or respect other opinions. They just kind of like, you're in that box, or you're with those guys, you're with these guys. We watch our TV network, you watch your TV network, you read your newspaper, we read our newspaper, and it's like 2 different worlds and all that. So we should have more tariffs, less tariffs, tighter borders, more programs for the immigrants that are already here. I was reading a magazine called what's it called? Foreign Affairs, because I do some of that stuff in D.C. too. Just one figure, I don't know if any of you have heard this, as an example of the depth of problems we face. Fill in the blank if you can. Between the year in 2016, how many people died in the United States of America, 2016, from opioid overdose? Guess how many? Oh. Wow, you're really convinced. Who said that? Prabhu? You are really convinced about the nature and the terror world. You must be. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's not 500,000. But it's a lot. But you just take away 1 0. It's that high. 50,000 people died in 2016 from overdoses, from addictions and overdose of drugs that generally are prescribed. Now it's a big thing on the street too, but generally they're prescribed by doctors. Generally. And here's another number. Between the year 2000 and the year 2016, more people in America alone died of opioid addictions and overdose than the combined deaths of World War I and World War II. You think about, like, you go in Washington, D.C., there's big monuments, World War II, they haven't done one for World War I. It's a big thing, right? They get, TV shows all the time. They get whole history channels about what happened in World War II, World War I, all the people that died, etc. More people died in that 15-year period from overdoses of just one type of drug than both those wars combined. So just an idea of, we tend to think everything's kind of nice. The sun's going down, it's a nice evening, and Washington's been raining for a little while. LA life's pretty hellish right now, and with the heat. But so thoughtful people will hear things like that. 50,000 people. I mean, that's a lot of people. That's a big stadium at a good-sized university. Fill it up with like a big football game on Saturday and just kill all those people for 1 year. And the next year we're going to have the same number going to die. And the year after that, the same number. That's a lot of people. I mean, that's more than car accidents, etc. So, a thoughtful person thinks, what's going on there? So Christian he's making actually kind of like a bold claim. Because people will say, okay, I was reading the magazine, here's the problem, and so many ideas, well, we should do this and do that and respond to it. But Christian says, no, take all your problems, put them in a box, and here's what they are. One, you don't know who you are. Because you don't know who you are, you're looking for material solutions. And the only way you can really fix it is with a spiritual solution. And that's like really radical stuff. I mean, generally, if you talk to most people, if they talk about, whatever the tax structure or some issue they're facing, you say, well, the real solution is people need to chant mantras, right? Try that at work, Make sure if you're a professor, make sure you have tenure. If you're an employee, make sure you have a contract. Because generally people think that's kind of ridiculous. It's naive. At the best, it's a nice faith. They might look at you like, you really believe that? How quaint. I'm glad. That probably gives you a lot of comfort, doesn't it? Isn't it? Be very patronizing. Like, there's no way a thoughtful person, generally, there's a sense that no thoughtful person would really say that, the highway problems, the traffic problems, the opioid epidemic, the economic crisis, the nuclear crisis with North Korea, you're not serious. But we're serious. Krishna is serious. Because he's talking about long-term solutions. Because the short-term problems are always going to come. And it doesn't mean that people shouldn't spend their time trying to figure out how to bring down the nuclear tensions with North Korea and helping deal with economic issues and family issues, etc. But Krishna's making a point here. Until we really understand who we are and what's the root cause of all the suffering, that we can't cure it. And it reminds me of a story I heard years ago that I like a lot, about a woman came home from one night at home, and it was after dark, and she drove in and she saw her husband was in the street, looking for something. So she parked her car, got out. She said, what are you looking for? What'd you lose? And he said, I lost my keys. And she said, are you sure you lost them here? He said, no, I lost them in the driveway. She said, what are you looking here in the street for? He said, because there's the light here, it's easier to see. So it's easier to look here, but the solution's over there. The keys are over there, but it's easier to look. So in a similar way, this is kind of, again, our Vaishnava response. And it's a radical claim to say that, as Krishna said in these two verses, that we're not material beings, we're spiritual. As he says, the real struggle is with our senses. And because of that, people aren't satisfied. And we can make so much progress, so much education work, bring up the gross national product and the economic indicators and all those things, and stabilize so many issues. But because Christians, people are struggling with their mind, and we see this. We're all trying to be intelligent people. You're all intelligent people. You observe people around us, and it really is, in fact, no matter how much people have, they're always wanting more. No matter where they go, they're wanting more. And again, Krishna says it's not because we just need a little more money or because we need a few more vacation days. I mean, isn't it like these days, if you get a job with a really good company, you can get up to like what? I mean, some people work for the government, like 5-week paid vacation, 6 sick days, flexible hours on Friday, 3 personal days, and like 8 national holidays. It's like, wow, when do you go to work? But if you ask them, was that enough? They're going to say, I could use a few more days. They're always going to wish they had a few more days. It's just that, Christians explain it's the nature of the mind. So therefore, this formula that Krishna is claiming, that Prabhupada is presenting to us, and that we're trying to take in our hearts, and we're trying to share with other people, is this essential concept that you can't really change the world. We have to change ourselves. I have to change me. I'm as much a part of the problem as anybody else is. And in order to do that requires not material formulas, but spiritual formula, because the root problem is spiritual. We have to change our consciousness. And again, it does the wonderful thing about bhakti. We don't walk away from the world. We still fulfill our various duties and responsibilities as parents or workers or students or bosses or wives and husbands and citizens and all those things. We still fulfill those, but that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to change our consciousness, ultimately awaken our love for Krishna. But as Prabhupada's pointed out and Krishna's pointed out here, that to get to that stage of awakening our love for Krishna is not just a sentimental thing. I mean, there's a lot of people in the world will say, I remember ITV did a video about vegetarianism years and years ago, and they interviewed some Hollywood woman who had been a star or something. And she was talking about vegetarianism, and she said, I always tell people who say I love animals. She said, no, you should correct what you say. You should say I love cats and I love dogs, because you can't say I love animals and then be eating chickens and eating cows and eating pigs, et cetera, et cetera. So you got to correct what you're saying there. So, in a similar way, we can have some sense of love in this world, but again, Krishna's making this radical claim that we have to purify ourselves. We have to purify our consciousness. So, Prabhupada talks about in the Bhagavatam and in the text that Vaishnavism, Krishna consciousness, ISKCON, Bhakti Yoga, is meant to bring about a revolution in the misguided lives of an impious civilization. And this is a very, very, very impious civilization we're living in today. I mean, it's just, I get 50,000 people. It's not that there's 50,000 people every year become addicts to this new drug. And even this magazine was saying that so much responsibility lies with the drug companies. Big. In fact, just as an example, there was a law passed in the year 2013 to prevent the Federal Drug Administration from investigating corporations about how they abuse their power to peddle these drugs, and 50,000 people died. So like there's that much political power, just as a tiny example of how impious things are. Wouldn't you think, like Vietnam War, again, in Washington, D.C., and go see the monument, it's a whole generation of people scarred by the war and lives shattered and, this and that, and, it was a mess, and just now becoming friends with Vietnam. 50,000 people, and we're still trying to get over it, but 50,000 people just in 1 year died from the thing. But they have a law preventing the federal government from investigating what they were doing. It's like, gosh, that's a mess. See? And that's when we stand up and say, what's the problem? The problem is, Prabhu is saying, the problem is pride. The problem is lust. The problem is greed. The problem is wanting to manipulate the material world. And what's interesting is we know that in the world around us and in our own hearts, the tendency is it's so easy to see what's wrong with other people. Isn't it? It's so easy to find. I bet you're all saintly people, but I will admit, I'm expert in finding the faults in other people. You can walk in a room, I immediately tell you what's wrong with you. I got to work hard to see some good qualities if I really work at it. But generally, the mind is such, isn't it? Watch your mind a little bit sometimes. It's amazing how often it goes to the negative. And therefore, sadhana is there, spiritual practice is there. And therefore, in the earliest days when devotees were first coming, and Prabhu was starting to teach them about the practices of bhakti, at one point he told them, if I told you everything required, you'd faint. So, not to scare any of us away, but once we kind of get a little bit of a sense of what Krishna's teaching us, we realize he's actually asking each and every one of us to become instruments in transforming the world. Of course, and again, it begins with me, and to whatever extent I can, my friends. Well, let's start with my family, trying to be good examples for our children and all those kind of things. But we all are, we're all in this together. And Krishna's giving us, and Prabhupada's expanding for us this understanding that human life begins, as he says many, many times, human life really begins with spiritual practice. And spiritual practice means transformation. It doesn't just mean I go to the temple, or I go to the church, or I go to the mosque, or I go to the gurdwara, and like that. But it really is about transformation. And what's wonderful about that transformational process is it's fun. It's actually quite fun. We do fun stuff. We sing and we dance. Oftentimes, I don't live real close to the temple these days, so I'm not able to go to the temple every day for Mangal Arti. But when I'm there, I offer me just thinking about what amazing religion this is we have. Who in the world gets up and some people stay up till 4:30 in the morning. That's one thing. But who gets up at 4:30 in the morning and sings and dances? If you stop thinking about this, this is kind of amazing, right? And you look at, say, like, we have like our big festival. Like, okay, they have Thanksgiving, and and they kill a bird and put some potatoes on the plate, and that's the feast. We have a feast. It's like we talk. We did 108 this year. Well, we're going to do 208 next year. We did 508. It's like. It's amazing. It's kind of amazing. It's an amazing culture. It's amazing, really beautiful culture. And the idea that, well, what do? We come together, we sit and we talk about how we can enrich our relationships with each other, how we can become better servants of society, how we can overcome whatever petty issues I have with, a little bit of greediness sometimes, or I get angry. That's how many people actually come together. If you go to a party sometime at the office, right, they invite you to office party, say, look, let's do something different. Let's talk for an hour about how each and every one of us can try to get over being lusty. I got a new party a new game for the party. Let's do. They go, this is crazy. We want to have fun. But Krishna here is saying, well, that's not the fun. The fun's got to come from transforming ourselves and our hearts. So how do we do that? Association with devotees is so important. So I commend and appreciate all of you. You come together on Friday nights. There's a lot of things you all could be doing on Friday nights. You all have friends that are doing a lot of things different than this on Friday nights. So to make that kind of commitment is a wonderful thing. And Rupa Goswami, one of the 6 great Goswamis, particularly instructed that whatever spiritual practice you take up, you should try to do on a steady basis. And by that process, our heart becomes cleansed. So, particularly instructed, for instance, if we start chanting japa, we should try to every day chant 1 round, as an example. Not that we chant 1 and then we get fired up and chant 42, and then we don't chant it again for another 42 days. Better we chant 1 and then move up to 2 or move up to 4. And there still may be some challenges that come up. So the nature of this world, we can't be perfectly steady in everything we do. But as in general, to do that. So the idea to try to make a commitment. I'm going to chant every day this much, or I'm going to read every day this much, or I'm going to try to come every Friday for the Bhakti Vriksha, or come here or do both if you can, but to try to take up that association. And part of the process, to be perfectly honest, in Krishna consciousness is to develop faith and conviction, because we're free spirits. It's described throughout the Vaishnava philosophy. God gives us free will. So with that free will, we've got a big scope of variety of things that we can do. So, the bottom, American expression we all know, right? The bottom line is we have this choice. And we're trying to line up our choices with what's best for us spiritually. It's not uncommon that sometimes subtly, in terms of just our mind or with our bodies, we do different things. It's an ongoing process of bringing our mind back to Krishna, bringing our desires back to Krishna. And the fact is, too, that in our spiritual practice, sometimes we've all experienced this, even if we haven't been around so long. Krishna sometimes gives us just kind of like a rain shower of special mercy. And you kind of feel like your head popped up above the clouds, and you look around and think, why are all these people doing all these crazy things? Why aren't they just practicing spiritual life? Sometimes we get that little insight, or sometimes we see the deities, or we chant, or we see some, and we just think, oh, this is so wonderful. And other times it's described right in the Shastra, that spiritual life sometimes it's like eating sugar cane if you have jaundice, right? It's right there in the Shastra. Our acharyas are very kind to us. They don't leave us in the dark thinking we're the only one that sometimes doesn't feel so inspired. But part of the process of spiritual life is steadily apply ourselves. And slowly, that state, that taste, that experience becomes very steady. And slowly, the other things just kind of fade away. So 2 things: we should be steady, we should push ourselves a little bit, and at the same time, don't be too hard on ourselves. Don't expect ourselves to be pure devotees tomorrow. And please don't pretend that we're pure devotees today, because we're not. And sometimes that gets a little obnoxious. In fact, the world's full of, that's where extremism comes from. It starts with a little pride. It says here we shouldn't be proud. But sometimes it starts with a little artificial sense of, I'm more spiritually advanced than I am. Better we should think, I'm becoming so spiritually advanced, I'm realizing how I'm not at all advanced. Right? So, just a few thoughts. So we'll stop, and I'm going to hold this if I can. I'd like to hear some questions or comments or discussion, and that would be much appreciated. So thank you for listening, and it could be on what we read in the Gita or any other topic at all. Any questions you might have? Yes, Mataji. And I think we usually have a microphone for everyone, right? There's a very organized community here. By the way, congratulations to all of you on the new driveway coming up. Hari Bol. Last time I was here, there was a pile of dirt. So you may not have noticed, because sometimes when changes come slowly, you don't notice. But I can say I was away for a few weeks. So coming back after a few weeks, there's definitely very Okay? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the class today. So, I've recently started attending Bhakti Riksha in Pratul Prabhu's leadership, and I've been learning a lot since then.
Okay.
So my question is...
How long have you been coming to that, if you don't mind my asking?
Come again?
How long have you been practicing, participating?
In Bhakti Riksha this year.
Okay.
But
This year means 2018, so 6 months or so. Okay,
yeah.
good. Thank you.
But I've been in ISKCON since 10 years. I've been introduced like 10 years ago, and
Okay,
it's
10
very
years.
slow for me, but
Okay, great.
I'm trying.
Good.
So
Me too.
My question is...
I'm also trying. And sometimes you feel like the wind's behind you, and sometimes the wind's coming at you. But keep trying.
Thank you.
Okay.
As we learn, we become proud.
As we learn, we become
We
proud.
become proud. It doesn't matter if it is material or spiritual. We are more happy in the spiritual, but we are also more pride in the spiritual side of it. So how, like, I'm talking about devotee relationships, and how do I not use the familiarity about the other person and still stay on the ground? How do I ground myself?
Okay, I followed you. You should talk about pride, but then you said, how do I not have the familiarity with the other person?
Right.
So that also makes us become proud? Like comparing to other people?
We think we are proud, and we don't think the other person is better than us. Like, we know them, and we take them for granted.
We take them for granted. Oh, that's kind of, yeah, okay, that's a little bit two different things, but they're intertwined. First of all, a story comes to my mind on the pride issue. Early, when the temple was first, I think on the La Cienega Boulevard in Los Angeles, and Prabhupada made Tamal Krishna Maharaj either the president or maybe temple commander, or gave him some position like that. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked Prabhupada, he said, but Prabhupada, if you give me that position, I'll become proud. And I can't give you the exact demarcation, but I'll go through the model and you'll get the idea. So he asked Prabhupada, how should I not become proud? And Prabhupada said something to this effect: you should understand that there's millions of universes coming from Lord Vishnu's pores. Within one of those universes, there's millions of planets, one of which is called Earth. Within the planet Earth, there's many countries, with one of which is United States of America. Within the United States of America, there's 50 states, one of which is California. Inside California, there's hundreds of cities, one of which is Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, there's hundreds of streets, one of which is La Cienega. On that street, La Cienega, there's many houses. One of those houses is here, and within that house, among many people, there's one Tamal Krishna. So don't be proud, right? Like, put it in perspective, isn't it? So I think part of it is, it's true that pride comes with wealth, pride comes with power, pride comes with beauty, with strength, with knowledge. But if we're really becoming knowledgeable, then we have to become humble. Real knowledge. If somebody's proud, they're not really knowledgeable, really, according to the definition. Because if we have knowledge, that means what do I know? I know I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, and that everyone else is Krishna's servant, and the way to please Krishna is to serve everyone else. So if in my so-called knowledge I'm thinking I'm better than everyone else in one way or the other, then I don't really have any knowledge. Therefore I should become very humble because I'm so foolish. So my knowledge should help me become more humble. But we have to work at it, because false ego is there. You know, we're under these different modes of nature. Is that okay? And the thinking of the other person, a good thing we should try to think, we should try to remember, right? Hearing, chanting, and remembering. One of the reasons we hear again and again and again, so that it becomes so we can remember it. So part of that remembering is that everyone is part and parcel of Krishna. And we should try to, if we feel some ill will towards another person, we should stop. This is sadhana. Sadhana means like when we chant japa, our mind goes so many places, and the Guru instructions, Krishna instructions, bring it back to the holy name. So the same way during the day, the mind goes to, I don't like that person. We should stop. That person is a devotee. Krishna, I offer my respects to that person. Or I'm better than them. Crazy things, or I don't like this, that. You should, no, wait, stop. Hare Krishna. I'm a servant of Krishna. That person is a servant of Krishna. I offer him my respects. And slowly, then it comes inside. Okay? Yes, Prabhu.
So I would just continue what she said. How can we become less, how can we not have the pride from what we are learning? Oh, it's loud. So the way I think, if we are knowledgeable, if we are Krishna conscious, and we are in Bhakti Vriksha, we should be more listening. That's how I think it. And if we are more listening and we are not self-constrained and open to see what others are trying to say, and then educate people in the Bhakti Vriksha. This is like sort of my point of view, how we can improve. And like we have seen the discussions where we will say, oh, there are so many Gitas available, but we will use only Gita that Prabhupada wrote. Makes sense, but how you communicate that and how you translate that in a positive way. That also
So you're giving that as an example.
Yeah, that's another example of, and also you also referred in the beginning that, there are people who have their own TV, their own, phones or whatever, right? So how can we get away from that and collaborate and come up with, something that, how can we influence people in a positive way from, in Bhakti Vriksha, from a Krishna consciousness?
Yeah. Thank you. Other comments or questions? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. When you were...
If we were a smaller group, we'd sit in a circle, right? But it's too big now. So there are advantages to that.
So in your lecture, you said how beautiful this organization is, where morning 4 o'clock people come and dance. And likewise, it's indeed true that this organization and ISKCON is so beautiful that the way it has integrated the universe, right from village to the biggest city, diversity of the people, that's one of the proof that how it is pure. The integration is not based on some one mundane, some ideas, right? There is genuine something, otherwise it can't grow. Superficial thing dies down after some time. And the other thing, like what you said, that this organization, the various people has come, then the faith is very important, like you talked about the faith. So, and everyone who has given the faith in this organization ultimately has been benefited, has realized that benefit, but it takes time. So that's one of my realization I wanted to share in echoing what you said.
Thank you. Nice realization. I saw a sign in front of a church today, and it said, faith makes everything possible, not necessarily easy. I thought that was very wise. Faith makes everything possible, but not necessarily easy. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
In other words, we can be people who have some spiritual knowledge, some conviction, but it doesn't mean that applying that is always easy. It can be very hard.
Yeah, so my question is in a similar line, Prabhu, that you mentioned and Prabhu mentioned that we have such a wonderful culture and wonderful process and it's fun to follow this. But at the same time, theoretically I do have faith. And as you mentioned, we need faith and conviction. But I feel like in today's world, just being an average worker is not enough anymore. You know, I have to sharpen my skill continuously. I have to continue upgrading my knowledge to maintain. So how do I understand that this process is the most important thing in my life compared to other things, and practically apply that?
How do I understand that it's the most important thing in my life and practically apply it? Thought comes to my mind, how important is breathing? How important is breathing for all of us? Right, so if it's the most important thing, right? Right? You can live without water for a while, you can live without food, you can live without a roof, you can live without, association, but breathing within a minute or two, right? But at the same time, we don't think about breathing. It's become, it's automatic. It's like they say, second nature. It's really first nature. But it underlies everything that we do. And you could say, what, it's the air element. So, it's the most subtle of the nourishments that we get. It's more subtle than food, more subtle than water, more subtle than sleep, more subtle than clothes. It's very subtle. But without it, we can't maintain. So, in a similar way, that our spirituality, or our Krishna consciousness, as it awakens, it underlies everything we do, and it's manifest more and more. We're aware of it more and more, but it's there. But in other words, our Krishna consciousness impacts the way we do our work, and it may be that we're not even conscious of it, but it's becomes who we are. And so we become a Krishna conscious worker, not just a worker. We become a Krishna conscious parent, not just a parent, become etc. like that. So, and that takes some effort, but at the same time we understand from our acharyas that it's our natural position. What distracts us from it is artificial. I think that's a good thing for us all to remember. Sometimes if the practice sometimes may feel difficult, we should always take faith that it's not like I'm not qualified. I'm already Krishna conscious. It's who I am. I am a devotee of Krishna. I've just forgotten. And that's not just me. That's not just some sentiment. That's what the Shastra says. It's what the Acharya says. It's what Krishna says. That's who we are, with just some temporary obstacles. And even if, some days, some period of time, we can do so much qualitatively and quantitatively. Other times we can't do so much, but just do what you can do. Make that little bit of progress. Yeah, and I think an inspiring thing to do is read some of the biographies, especially Lilamrita, Prabhupada Lilamrita, Shyamasundara's got his new biography, Mukunda Raj has got a great biography of Prabhupada. And you just see how Prabhupada was such an amazing, transcendental person, and so compassionate to these people that were coming and helping him. People make such crazy mistakes, but he would correct them, but he never gave up hope that anybody and everybody can become Krishna conscious, including you and me. Yeah. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Let's see, in case somebody else like to question or comment? Way in the back? Just because we give everybody else a chance. It's always good to have somebody with a lot of questions, so just in case, so thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for very inspiring class, which is focusing on the fundamentals, yet how we have to really take them to the heart and practice. One thing is you were mentioning about the faith. That is something I have been thinking, how it's so different when we compare to the first generation, you all like Srila Prabhupada's disciples, and the current generation. My question is really, we are at a certain level. We cannot imitate or enact that we have a higher levels of faith. At the same time, we have to really abide and try to follow our spiritual mentors and spiritual masters' directions. How do we take that inspiration and really go deeper into that levels of faith?
Your statements were more interesting than the question. I thought you were going to go a different place with that. You talked about faith. Can I comment on that for a second? I remember years ago hearing a wonderful analysis that in Krishna consciousness, faith is not a blind faith, but it's a reasonable faith. So, I mean, there are some spiritual traditions, perhaps, that would say you just believe it, and that's all you have to do is believe it. In a little bit, that's a superficial analysis, but there's some people who would say that's all that's required. With us, it's more based on the idea we are conscious beings who made a bad choice, and we have to undo that choice. We have to change that choice. But it's not a cheap thing. It requires, Krishna's a person, and we're persons, and for him to welcome us back into his entourage, we have to really, really, really want to go. You can't go back into the spiritual world on a spiritual airplane, looking out the back seat, wondering what you missed. It doesn't work that way, So he gives us unlimited opportunities, and I mean, the Shastra tells us that, different bodies, different species, different planets, universes. I mean, there's a lot of scope to experience this place. And to fully realize ourselves, we have to come to this point of simultaneously realizing that we really just want Krishna and everything that comes with that, and we don't want materialistic separatist consciousness and everything that comes with that. So the faith comes, like I say, it's not blind faith. Like, faith comes when we all had some kind of experience where a friend told us, no, you should come to the temple on Janmashtami, it's really nice. And we're like, no, I don't want to do that, right? Even Prabhupada, his friend told him, no, you must come see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He said, no, I've seen so many sadhus. Of course, Prabhupada's life is transcendental. We can't understand all the meaning behind it, but just as an example for us, he was like, there's so many people. I don't really have faith in these. But as soon as he met him, then based on that experience and the knowledge, he said, in his case, from the first time he met him, he knew he was his guru. So, with ourselves, so someone says, like we have, sometimes friends, no, just eat this food, it's really good. No. No, seriously. But on the basis of your friendship, they'll eat a little bit of prasad and they go, oh, that's really good. So a little bit of faith in you, they come to the temple. A little bit of faith, they'll try the food. A little bit of faith, they'll read one page. And then they get some kind of knowledge, some experience, something pleasant. And then that, based on that faith, hey, it was pretty good last time I went. Let me go again. So in the same way, whoa, chanting one round was pretty good. Maybe I'll try two. Going to the temple once a month was pretty nice. Maybe I'll try to go twice a month. Or, etc. I gave $100 donation. That didn't feel that bad. Maybe I can give 1,000. Oh, that felt kind of bad. Let me hold off. I don't want to, Or maybe it's like, whoa, that was great. Take it all, or whatever. So that's the process, and we should push ourselves, but realistically, and try to give other people the opportunity. But kind of like you were making a point somehow too, like we can't force other people, but we should. Who made you made that point? Yeah. We should be so welcoming and so inviting that people just kind of can't say no. No, really, you have to taste this blueberry shortcake, or, these are the best samosas you've ever had. Just smell this samosa, offered to Krishna. Maybe you don't tell them that right away, right? And then they just think this is really nice. I always think of the example of George Harrison, the famous Beatle. One point he said, with all of his famous and rich friends, he said, I came to the point I realized I like being with those people, the Krishnas, more than these people. Of course, his life kind of went back and forth, but, at least at one stage, that was his experience. So that's faith. That's a certain stage of faith. And, in the higher states, Haridas Thakur, okay, I'm not this body, most of you know the story, he was like tortured by the king. Jesus, probably an example, Jesus, they hung him up on a cross, put nails through his hands. He said, he was transcendental. That's a lot of faith. So it grows. It's a natural process. Is that okay? Did I answer? Okay. Someone else? Yes, Prabhu.
Can you share your story, how did you join ISKCON?
How I joined ISKCON? Everybody has different stories. My story, I think maybe just a couple unique things. I had no interest in religion whatsoever. I went to a Christian church camp as a child just because they had great canoeing and a wonderful lake. And I was kind of turned off by that particular presentation of religion I thought was very superficial. So I kind of went through a stage of life I was pretty much an atheist. And then I took my last year in high school, I took a religion class only because my friends were in that class. So it's completely Krishna's trick. I was like in a history, like the semester was broken up, and I had a whole group of friends, and halfway through the year, they all went to the religion class, and I went to economics. And after a few days, like George Harrison, I realized I'd rather be with those guys than these guys. So I got out of the economics class and took the religion class, and it made so much sense. I remember like a little bit from Buddhism that in simple terms, he has this Four Noble Truths, and I don't remember so much of the details, but one of the essential things, no matter how much you have, will never have enough, which of course is part of our philosophy too, that the desire is unlimited. And it just hit me as a kid living in the suburbs and, with affluent neighborhood and just knowing my friends' parents and just seeing these people are never satisfied. It was like, gosh, that makes so much sense. That makes a lot more sense than everything I was learning in the economics class. About, produce more, produce more, produce more. It's like, well, yeah, but then what? And then you go to the other classes like, it won't be enough. It's like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense. And so many things, studied a little bit of Hinduism and Christianity and Judaism. So I came away with a deep, and the Hare Krishnas came to our class one day. And I don't remember much except they looked really otherworldly. And I remember in those days, I think the young girls were just trying to figure out Indian fashion and all that, Vaishnavi fashion. And as I remember, they all had like big rings in their noses, and like the deities when they're all dressed like Radharani, she'd be like a big chain up here. That was really kind of unusual. But then we learned the mantra, and I started chanting the mantra. And then later went to college, and I used to see the Krishnas sometimes on campus. And I got involved I was studying social science, political theory, and kind of the social sciences, and trying to make the world a better place, and came face to face with a lot of, what's the term, disparity, which disturbed me. I think I was always a little sensitive to that. I grew up I was born in the 50s, raised in the 60s, very tumultuous time in America, race relations, and there were riots in the cities, and there was a lot of anger and bitter in the Vietnam War, and so it was like, wow, the world is a difficult place. So I was just kind of wondering, well, they got into like political science, which is like, what should the system be? How do we create a system so that the people in the cities can get ahead and, minimize the differences and opportunities for different races and ethnicities and all of that. And then after like studying it for about a year and a half, I became completely convinced that nobody has a clue how to solve these problems. Maybe it was my youthful naivety, but they bring in one expert one week and say, this is, we got to like put more money into this system and do this, and then they bring another expert in this the next week, another PhD wrote 6 books, completely contradict what the other guy said. And I was starting to get kind of confused. And most people, frankly, I think kind of like thought like, well, look, just get through it and get a job. Just, don't worry about it. Just get through it and get a job. But I was kind of really struggling with it. And then I had a favorite professor, and we used to write, we had to study these different philosophies, Marx and Locke and Hobbes and Machiavelli and all these different people. And the final paper I wrote for my very favorite professor, we're supposed to analyze these different political theories about how you organize society. And I kind of come to a little bit of a realization that these people are geniuses. I can't critique Karl Marx. He's a genius. I can't critique, forgetting names now, but I can't critique Aristotle. I can't critique Plato. But what I can say is that from what I've seen is all these people, the first 30 pages of their books, they lay out their premises. Man is by nature involved in class warfare. And based on that, here's the solution. Volumes and volumes and volumes of books. And somebody else says, like, modern capitalist philosophy is based on John Locke. Humanity or man is by nature at war over the goods. And we entered into social contract, and you should minimize that so the individuals can thrive. So so I wrote a paper that said, hey, these people are geniuses. Don't ask me to critique them, but I want to know what's the truth. Which one of their 30 pages premises is true? And my teacher, remember very well today, Professor Zimmerman, brilliant man, his response was, we're not here to discuss truth. And again, outside this room, a lot of people wouldn't laugh. They would think, well, that's obvious. We're not here to discuss truth. This is a university education. You get a degree, get a job, and get on with life. And they would say, all of us, you're naive religious people. Or maybe some people say to me, you're just a naive, college sophomore or junior, or whatever it was then. But to me, that was really important. And I could just see the whole thing. There's, and especially it's like, it wasn't a joke because there's millions of people been like fighting wars trying to force this system or that system because they're convinced it is true. And if we make a perfect communist system, everybody's going to be happy. Or if we just, let the capitalistic, let the, these arguments are going on in America today. Let those people that have the ability bring up the society, and everybody else is going to come with them. So it's like the whole societies are built around those things. So in the meantime, then that just kind of led, then I started just against my will, I just started coming across religious philosophies. It went back to like, Buddha says it's not enough. And Krishna says you got to change your heart, etc. And it all just started like, and I could see, well, these are the real philosophers. Jesus said some things like, don't lay up all your treasures where moth and dust, I think he said, corrupt. That's heavy. Everybody I knew was just going to get more and more and more. And here's, the greatest philosopher in the Western world saying that's a dead-end street. And you kind of wonder, has anybody ever read these books? Because nobody seems to be following it. And then slowly, and then also, at that point, I was going to Buddhist retreats on campus. I was hanging out with the Hare Krishnas whenever I could. There was people called Jesus freaks. I go see them sometimes. And I was going to church on Sunday. Because I just started to see, and to give the full story, I was working as a bartender at night. But realizing that's a dead end too. And that also, because you asked my story and it's whatever, I also could see, there was, you could see people all coming there to get, intoxicated and have a good time. But after a very short, like in the Bhagavad Gita describes the mode of passion, after a very short period of time, it goes from like looking really fun to horrible. And you see the same people coming back Friday night after Friday night after Friday night, just putting on a face, pretending, and guys trying to meet girls and girls trying to meet guys, and everybody walking around like they're having a great time. But, like you scratch the surface, and they're not happy. They're really, really not happy. So materialistic things kind of started fading, and the spiritual opportunities started increasing. And I reached a certain point, it's like, there's definitely something there. There's too many, Jesus talked about something 2,000 years ago in Israel that Krishna and others talked about 5,000 years or more in India, and Buddha talked about it, and it's like different languages, different cultures, and they're all saying there's another reality. There's another reality. And then there was one thing that really scared me. There's a couple parables in Jesus' teaching. He talks about the sower of seeds on the ground. He used a lot of stories. Like Bhagavatam's full of stories too. He said, like, you sow seeds on the ground. Some of them fall among the stones and don't take root. Some of them fall in the open area and the birds come and eat them. And some fall in the fertile ground. And then I think, if I remember, oftentimes he would end his parables by saying, whoever has ears, let him so hear. And I remember reading that, and I could see he's talking about spiritual knowledge, the opportunity for spiritual growth. Is, some places it's going to just not even take root. Some places it's going to take root and stop. And a few rare places it's going to grow. And that scared me, because I just saw, okay, I'm somehow getting a special opportunity to see these things, to hear these things, and now it's up to me. It's up to me. I got to try to. So gradually. So then I quit university, traveled for a while, traveled around the country, and ended up in Denver, Colorado. And this is a little bit of funny kind of my story. I had $75 left after saving all my money and traveling around the country. I actually did this too. I don't know anybody else that did this, which means I was really dull. Because before I took off on my little spiritual journey, I went back to visit every group of friends I had and every relative I had one more time. It's a true story. True story. I mean, I went back to my friends at college and went to whatever we did that was the best, went to the best party or whatever. And, at midnight asked myself, okay, if I could somehow freeze this moment, like, whatever, they're playing your favorite music and your favorite people are there and everybody, if I could freeze this moment, am I actually happy? Am I satisfied now? I says, no, I'm not. What to speak of all the other times you have to work hard to try to get that moment at 12 o'clock at night with your best friends, with the best music. I'm not satisfied. Okay, then I'm leaving. And don't ever try to tell me to come back here again, because you're lying to me. When my mind says, oh, it was so good. No, it wasn't. I just went back there. I went and visited my sister for a few days, and my brother for a few days, and my parents for a few days, and my aunts and uncles, and my cousins. Just for that, because I knew, like, these books are telling me there's something higher, go seek it. But I've got this nagging doubt, yeah, but I don't know, can I really, Again, we know bhakti, you don't have to give things up, and in my particular path at that time, I had to give these things up. So how do you give up something that's really, really good? So I had to go back one last time and convince, and it wasn't really, really good. I couldn't really take care of them, and they couldn't take care of me. I couldn't keep my parents from growing old and dying. It was beyond my capacity, like that. So then I traveled, and I ended up I went to Boulder, Colorado. I had $75 left. I had a choice. I could either attend a special. There was a retreat by a famous guru-type figure at that time called Ram Dass, and it was a music retreat. I wasn't that interested in music, but it was $75, and I had $75. Or I could move in the Krishna temple, because I had never lived in a temple. I was talking to devotees a lot, but they said, you can stay here for free. And I thought, okay, if I go with them, I spend my last $75, I'm out of options. But if I go to the Krishna temple for a week, it's free, I still have my $75. So I went to the Krishna temple. And the first night I moved in, because I knew this was something serious, I told myself, I prayed, dear Krishna, dear Rama, dear Buddha, dear Allah, dear Jesus, dear Jehovah, dear Moses, whoever you are, I don't really know how I'm supposed to find you, but I know that that's the purpose of life. I'm convinced from all these things I've seen and experienced and the teachers I've heard from. So if this isn't what I'm supposed to do, please tell me. And if it is what I'm supposed to do, please give me the strength to carry it out. And I promise I'm not going to leave to go back to anything else. I'll only leave if I find this isn't correct, it's not right, and there's something better. So I'm not going to go back and do those things that I just revisited one more time. I'm only going forward. So I'm still here, although I gave away my $75 after a couple of weeks. So they got my $75. So Anyway, that's a longer version, but anyway. And in part, I just tell that story because I think it's a very human, mundane kind of a story. But I think it's part of the process of Krishna consciousness. That Krishna calls us all in different ways. We have different things that draw us close to him and different things that are obstacles. But in one sense, it's a very mundane story. But in some ways, each of our stories is a very sacred story because it's Krishna bringing us back to him. Someone else? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for giving your valuable time. So I have a question.
My plane ticket's not till Tuesday, so I got a lot of time.
Thank you very much. Being in Grihastha Ashrama, I mean, I personally, like anybody else, so from the morning till evening, we wear different hats, starting from the husband, then parent, then employee, and then friend, whatnot, so many things. So the life is busy, and in one sense, and complex also, in spite of having so many amenities. And you being in Grihastha Ashrama, for several decades you have been serving mission. How can you give us some practical tips and tricks how we can develop steadiness and consistency so that we can serve and progress on our spiritual path?
Okay, it's a very nice question. It's a deep question. And I'm also still learning. Some thoughts come to my mind. First of all, in any situation, whether we're brahmachari or grihastha or sannyasi or vanaprastha, we should remember we're dependent on Krishna's mercy. You can't be a brahmachari without Krishna's mercy. You definitely can't be a sannyasi without Krishna's mercy. And you can't be a grihastha without Krishna's mercy. So always remembering that I'm dependent upon him in every way. So that's the first thing. And I think especially for grihasthas, it's really important, and Prabhupada mentions it in this purport, about becoming, or maybe I read it in another verse when I was reading today, and I think it was there, I have to look, about becoming free from feelings of possessiveness. So that's the danger of grihastha life. It's my wife, my kids, my bank balance, my house, my car. And so an important thing for grihastha life is to try to train ourselves with the truth, which is it's Krishna's house, it's Krishna's car, it's my wife is Krishna's servant, I'm Krishna's servant, it's Krishna's bank balance, and all those things. And gradually, slowly, to live and act like that more and more and more. And Krishna consciousness is a process. It's an awakening process, and it's awakening and also realizing it's so much better that way. Going to work and knowing that ultimately it's up to Krishna. The boss may like the report, he may not like the report. I did the best I could, and it's up to you, Krishna, if they like it or don't. And if I get the bonus, that's your mercy. If I don't get the bonus, that's your mercy. Okay, the roof's leaking, that's your mercy. And because our philosophy is the whole material world. Prabhupada writes in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there's two purposes. One is to give the living entity the opportunity to enjoy, and the second is to gradually purify us to come through I think he used the term sacrificial method, to teach us how to sacrifice for others so gradually we connect with Krishna. So like when you go to work and you're working hard to make money to help maintain your family, that's part of the process of becoming selfless. Human form of life is a little bit kind of like vanashram. It's the whole concept of gradually performing your duties for some higher purpose. So part of it is just to become conscious of that, be aware of that process. And again, it's like japa. We're supposed to be really focusing on the mantra. It's not easy, but when it goes away, we should try to bring it back. So in the same way, we start thinking, my house. We should know this is Krishna's house. You know, I'm upset because, I'm angry because look what that guy did. He just drove across my lawn, you rascal. Ah. You say, whoa, it's Krishna's lawn. He didn't hit the guy with the lightning bolts. I didn't see any lightning. Krishna wasn't that mad with him. Why am I so mad with him? He could have burned him on the sizzle, right? He drove on my lawn. So he's a little patient, so let me become a little patient. I think those are important things. Really try to remember that it's Krishna's. And remember that I'm Krishna's, and remember that Krishna, more than anything else, Krishna wants to bring me, in terms of me, he wants to bring me back to him. It's not that important to him whether I get the vice president role, or whether I get the big bonus, or whether I become famous, or whether whatever. That's not so important for him. What's more important for him is going through those processes, how he's helping us become more connected to him. And that's part of the surrendering. Prabhupada talked to this purport about surrendering. That's part of the surrendering process is, okay, Krishna, and when we're feeling it, it's just so wonderful to wake up in the morning, okay, Krishna, what do you got planned for me today? And, we know ahead of time there's going to be some happiness, there's going to be some distress, there's going to be some success, there's going to be some failures, there's going to be some pride, there's going to be some humility, there's going to be some confidence, there's going to be some fear. It's a whole wonderful mix. And if I'm conscious, the more conscious I am, the more benefit I'll get out of it. And I'll make as much progress as possible. And if we're not so conscious, we'll still make progress. He's still there in everybody's heart. But the more we're in relationship with him and aware of it, the better. It's like a coach. If a coach is trying to teach somebody how to hit a baseball, if you're just kind of listening to the instructions and going through the motions, there's some benefit. But if you're really tuned in, you're very much hearing what he's asking you or she's asking you to do, and you're trying to apply it to the best of the ability, how much more quickly you're going to progress. Yes, remember who's the proprietor. Main thing. Okay. Anything else? You had another one. Huh? If we quit at 9, Mataji, is that good, Premananda? Yeah. Okay. So that's 5, it's like 7 minutes.
Hare Krishna. I think you already answered it, but I will phrase it.
But you want me to do a better job this time around. Okay, I understand. Okay. See, this is a Vaishnavi mercy, see? They give you 2 tries. See, Krishna gives us unlimited tries. Even you mess up your whole life, you still get the next life. He's very kind.
How to deal with familiarity?
How do we?
How to deal with familiarity? In a
I missed the word. How do we?
Familiarity.
Familiarity.
In a Bhakti Riksha group.
Okay, you mean like that idea, familiarity breeds contempt? That idea? You know that expression?
No.
The English expression, familiarity breeds contempt. So like if you know something too well, you first you take it for granted, then later you don't like it, then later you can even despise it. Yeah. So what the question is,
how to deal with them?
How do we overcome that? Well, that's the material experience. The spiritual experience is everything is ever increasingly joyful. Krishna goes out I haven't seen it with these eyes, but according to Acharyas, Krishna goes out every single day and herds the cows eternally. It's not like one day he gets up and says, been here, done that. Right? Or Mother Yashoda, can't you dress yourself today? Or Radharani, he's coming back from the fields again now. It's the same. It's a whole different realm in consciousness. And we understand because this is the perverted consciousness here. And one reason familiarity breeds contempt, or one reason we become familiar, is because we're thinking materially. See, our bodies, our mind, our senses, they can never really gratify us. So something seems full of promise. Isn't it like you get a new car and you think, wow, am I going to enjoy this? Isn't it? You know, until you get the estimate of how much your insurance is going to go up. And then all of a sudden it's mixed, right? And then when you go in the grocery store and you come out and somebody ran the shopping cart along the whole side of the car, and there's a nice line, right? And then so then, or things get older, or things like the English expression, things get tired. The reason they get tired is because we're thinking, I'm the enjoyer of this thing. See? I'm the enjoyer of this thing, and because it's not satisfying me, I get frustrated with it. Like in a material consciousness, and we're trying to, let's say a husband is thinking that I'm the enjoyer of my wife, or the wife's thinking I'm the enjoyer of the husband. Ultimately, that's why the divorce rate and everything's so high in the world at large. We also have issues with it in our society, but because if I'm the enjoyer, then if, like Prabhu writes, when there's some break in that relationship, then I become frustrated, and people go to war with each other in court. But if I'm understanding I'm the servant, see, if I'm the enjoyer, the relationship is based on how much I'm enjoying my pleasure. Because I'm not this body, my pleasure is subject to the whims of the modes of material nature. One day he looks like he's rich and famous, the next day he's a bum. One day she's beautiful, the next day she's like, oh my goodness. See, because it's all based on my sensual perception. But if we come to that stage of understanding, actually I'm a servant, we gradually start experiencing that being a servant is much more pleasurable, because it's our natural state. It's a state of joyfulness. To be a servant makes me happy. When I try to enjoy, I actually unhappy. And if I'm a servant, then nothing becomes familiar. Everything's an opportunity. In the Bhagavatam, it talks about how it gives the analogy, the man gets older and the family becomes disgusted with him. He used to be like the young, strong provider. Now he's like an old bull, and a materialistic culture has put him out to pasture, no respect. And they're standing, remember what canto is that? They're standing around the bed, I think third canto maybe? They're waiting for him to die. They've lost all respect. Why? Because he was giving us, I'm the enjoyer. The materialistic consciousness, I'm the enjoyer. Dad gives us, Papa, Father, whatever. He gives us this, he gives us this, he gives us this. Now he's giving us nothing. Useless. Prabhupada talks about, I guess there are some cultures around the world, I guess cannibal cultures, where when the old men, they hunt them at the end of life. They reach a point they're so useless for the society, they, give them get an hour, and then they go hunt them. I've heard that, and it's rare. Hopefully it doesn't happen anywhere these days. But it's the consciousness, at least in my family, I hope it doesn't happen. But the consciousness is there that this person is giving to me, and when they don't give to me anymore, then they have no value. And of course, that's the gross, terrible manifestation. It doesn't mean like everybody in the world's thinking or living like that. There's a lot of degrees of genuine care and charity. But the perfect spiritual consciousness is I'm a servant. Whatever I have, I want to give to serve others and help others. And that way, there's no limit, because there's no limit how much you can serve others. There's a limit how much your senses can be gratified, but there's no limit how much you can serve them. And this is where the faith and the gradually over time, and and our brains are dull. My brain is dull. We start experiencing and realizing, actually, when I serve, that's much more happiness. When I'm thinking about me, it's kind of tasteless, frustrating. That's why everybody's so angry. God bless our president, but the man's got everything, but he's one of the angriest people I've ever seen. He is one angry guy. And what anger comes from, Gita says, from unmet desires. You think of unmet desires, he's the most, we don't know his tax returns, but if theoretically, he's one of the richest, definitely most powerful, influential men in the world. And he's obviously so frustrated. And there's many, many, many examples like that. So why? Because when you're trying to, if you're thinking controls can make me happy, he's got more control than anybody in the world. But this doesn't seem to be making him happy. And the Shastra says because we're not the controller, we're not the enjoyer. We're meant to be the servant. So I would say, in short, change our consciousness to be a servant, and we won't feel, because you say, oh, I'm so familiar with this, she kind of irritates me. Okay, oh, what a wonderful opportunity to show Krishna I want to be a servant. Even though she irritates me, let me try to serve her. That's a saintly person. This guy drives me, boy, does he disturb my mind, let me try to serve him. Slowly, to build that. It's a revolution in consciousness. It's not, it's not the ordinary people, drive down the street, somebody bothers you, honk at them. No, we drive down the street, somebody honks at us, we think they must have had a really difficult morning. Krishna, please help them have a better day. See a homeless person, well, that's a different thing, but we should feel compassion for others. Okay, just like I should feel compassion because it's been a long night and you all have had a long day and you want to eat prasadam.
One last question.
No compassion. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. This question may be a very quick answer, or maybe it's like you mentioned.
Maybe hold the mic a little closer.
You mentioned about 2 instances in your life that clicked you. One was in the classroom when you were taking religion classes, and the other was you were left with $75, and then you had to choose. And after that,
choices. You're saying choices.
Choices.
Okay. As an example.
Yes.
There were a lot, but those are 2 that I mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. So, what hold you when you went there? What hold you there? What answer you got?
When I made that choice, what answer did I get? Or
Yes.
what told me to make the choice?
No. When you made the choice,
Okay.
then what hold you to be there forever? Kept
Told you
you.
or hold you? What kept you there? I'm still struggling to be there. I mean, Prabhupada uses, sometimes I'm going to do a Veda-based search or somebody else can do it and tell me, but my observation is Prabhupada uses the word gradually so many times. Hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times. And he says Christian, in some places he talks about Christian consciousness is our birthright. It's who we are. We are spiritual beings. We are pure devotees. We are, as Satchit Ananda. There's just this covering. So, it's like if you go home and there's somehow or other, there's a big pile of dirty dishes in the kitchen. Okay, maybe one day you have a lot of energy, you clean a bunch of them. Maybe one day all you can do is clean one, but do something. So holding on means do something. I may have given this example before, but my sense of Christian consciousness, it's kind of like if there's a race, like say a boat race or something like that. And boats, the faster they go, like a small outboard motor, like a boat, if it's going slow, it's going flat, at least smaller boats. When they go fast, the front goes up. When the front goes up, the bottom goes down. So if you're in a race, and you got to go around something a certain number of times, it's not just the fastest one wins, right? Because if you go to, say there's a corner, and you don't slow down, even with a car race, half of it is how much can you slow. If you take the corner too fast, the boat's gonna flip or the car's gonna crash. So a lot of this skill is, okay, I'm in open water, full speed ahead. Okay, like in a boat race, you may not you can miss the corner, but also if sometimes the water gets more shallow, and if you're going full speed, the engine just hits the ground and just breaks the boat in two. So you got to pace yourself. Now, if you just say, okay, I'm going to race, but I'm just going to be the slowest one here and maybe I'll win, that doesn't work either. You have to go as fast as you can in the open water, and as fast as you can around the curve, and as fast as you can when the water is shallow. And sometimes that might mean, like in nautical terms, I don't know exactly, you're going 20 knots, whatever, or put it in miles. Sometimes you're going 70 miles an hour in race boats, but then you got to slow down to 10. So the same way, holding on, just as, don't think holding on means going full speed and every single day if I try to chant japa, it was so wonderful when I chanted then, and now it's going to be like that every day. No. Or we've actually, sometimes you come to the temple and you look around the room and you think, wow, these people are so wonderful. How am I so fortunate? And other times you come to the temple, your mind goes, oh, it's her. Am I the only one? I mean, you're laughing. There's some truth there, yeah? Isn't it? And in the 6th chapter, Krishna he tells us why that's there too. It's why it's Krishna consciousness, because there's explanation of these things. Because the mind is like our enemy if it's not controlled, and when it's controlled, it's our friend. So some days it's kind of friendly, some days it's not. Some days we're more attracted to Krishna, sometimes. Those are all the modes of material nature. But gradually, it becomes more and more steady. And as it becomes more and more steady, then it's a little, on that level, it's easier. So how do we hold on? We hold on, one, because we know the other options are not good. And that's why devotees, we shouldn't live in a cave. I mean, look, you drive down the street. I mean, you see the dead deer in the road, a little bit we should feel some compassion, and we should think, what kind of terrible world? It's such a beautiful animal. 1 minute ago it was like prancing through the forest, and now it's just a bunch of yuck in the middle of the street. Ooh, this is a nasty place. Right? So we should think about things like that. You hear 50,000 people in the United States of America last year died of an addiction, overdose to a drug that's supposed to take away your pain. Like on top of everything else, it's supposed to make your life better, but it kills you instead. So devotees think, oh my gosh, this place is a strange place. This is a strange world. So simultaneously, and Isha Upanishad talks about that, one who cultivates knowledge of transcendence and nescience at the same time can cross over the ocean of miseries. So be a little, be aware of how it's a difficult place. There's wonderful things in this world as well, but it's a difficult place. And then Krishna is so wonderful. And that way we get a little push from I don't want to be there, and we get the pull of I want to be with Krishna. Does that help? Is that okay? And hang out with people be with people that inspire you. Associate with people that inspire you. Read Prabhupada's books. Get inspiration from Prabhupada. Associate with other devotees. Try to hear as much as you can. Keep your intelligence sharp. And pray. Krishna, please help me. Give me a taste of your service. Okay? And remember, Krishna is your best friend, so he's always trying to help. Sometimes I pray, Krishna, I don't think I've been very sincere lately, and I'm really not maybe as focused in as I should be, but you're my best friend. Can you help me anyway? Could you please help me anyway? My prayers aren't even sincere. I don't even pray sincerely. So, you don't have to respond because I'm not very sincere, but by your nature, you're so kind. Can you please help me? And he's there to help us. And may not come on our time plan. I promise you won't come on our time plan. He's got his time. He's got his schedule. But it'll come. The help will come. Okay? Just like prasadam will come. You may have thought it was going to be at 8 o'clock, maybe 8:30, maybe 9. He said 9. Okay, it's 9:10, but prasadam is coming. So we'll stop there. Okay? Thank you all very much. Very pleasure to be with you. And again, we invite anybody that has time tomorrow, do this seminar we talked about earlier, 11 to 4. Yeah?
Thank you so much.
And morning class too? Morning class?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will
Thank you all for being here. So nice to see everybody together on this Friday evening. Prasadam is served downstairs, and please do honor the prasadam. Tomorrow morning, it is Saturday and Sunday, 7 o'clock, we have Srimad Bhagavatam class. So please come. And then tomorrow's seminar is at 11 o'clock. So we will be serving prasadam also. That seminar goes till 4. We have lunch and snacks and juice and everything served. And there is an evening program for the youth. Youth meaning 10 years and old, right? No parents allowed. That is in Satrupa Mataji's home. You can talk to her. It will be wonderful. That's all for today, right? Yes. Yeah, Krishna Prema Prabhu is telling we need 2 volunteers downstairs to serve and to clean also, right? Yes. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.